has as its function not to see what it is. Because the predicate of it all was, Father, I'd rather see it my way, not the way it is. Continuing, to the ego, the body is to attack with. Equating you with the body, it teaches that you are to attack with, because this is what it believes. The body, then, is not the source of its own health. The body's condition lies solely in your interpretation of its function. Now, that's not true, but as long as you are in that mindset, that will be your experience. You see, when you're not in that mindset, you could say that the body is the source of its own health, because the body in itself is neutral, is benign. It has no function relative to itself. It only has function relative to the communication of love. Love being the recognition or acknowledgement of that which is real in each and everything. Continuing, the reason why definitions in terms of function are inferior is that they may well be inaccurate. And of course, any definition that has been applied to something that is different from what the Father is being there is an inaccurate definition. Functions are part of being, since they arise from it. But the relationship is not reciprocal. The whole does define the part, but the part does not define the whole, which is another way of saying you are not God, but God is all there is of you. This is as true of knowledge as it is of perception. Now listen to this. The reason to know in part is to know entirely is because of the fundamental difference between knowledge and perception. And you could look at it this way. You can grasp the idea that to know in part is to know wholly, is illustrated in a hologram. Because if you cut a small part of a hologram away, you'll find that the whole picture that was in the entire hologram is present in the part. So, to know, and I would use a capital K there, to know in part is to know entirely. And the reason to know in part is to know entirely is because of the fundamental difference between knowledge and perception. In perception, the whole is built up of parts, which can separate and reassemble in different constellations. Knowledge, or capital K knowing, never changes. So its constellation is permanent. And I would add, its constellation leaves nothing outside of it. It is all-inclusive. It is whole. The only areas in which part-whole relationships have any meaning are those in which change is possible. There is no difference between the whole and the part where change is impossible. The only place where change is apparently possible is from the frame of mind in which body identification predominates. And the only place where change is impossible is in the frame of reference where it is mind, the conscious experience of being, that identifies you or is your identity. If you want variableness, stay with body identification. If you want, let's say, permanent harmony, if you want forever stable experiences of being, identify with and as mind. It doesn't mean stability in which the movement of creation doesn't occur. It isn't God frozen, but it's God and nothing but God in constant movement, unchanging in nature, character, intent, or actuality. The movement of creation is unchangeably what it is. Knowledge never changes, so its constellation is permanent. Continuing from where we left off, the body exists in a world which seems to contain two voices which are fighting for its possession. Seems is the key word. In this perceived constellation, the body is regarded as capable of shifting its control from one to the other, making the concept of both health and sickness possible. Now, when it says here that the body is regarded as capable of shifting its control from one to the other, it means the same thing as you regard yourself as capable of shifting your attention from one to the other, from one voice to the other, making the concept of both health and sickness possible. There's where you get into change. That's where you get into fluctuation. Because you think you actually have a choice to think for yourself or yield to God. And when the going gets rough, you yield to God. And when things straighten up, you think for yourself again. And when you think for yourself again, you find things getting difficult and you arrive at a point where you have to decide to yield to God. And you know what I'm telling you? I'm telling you that this sense of self that thinks it can shift its attention from one to the other doesn't really exist except in your imagination. You haven't stopped being the Christ. You haven't stopped being the evidence of God. Continuing, the ego makes a fundamental confusion between means and ends, as it always does. Regarding the body as an end, the ego has no real use for it because it is not an end. You must have noticed an outstanding characteristic of every end that the ego has accepted as its own. When you have achieved it, it has not satisfied you. This is why the ego is forced to shift from one end to another without ceasing, so that you will continue to hope that it can yet offer you something. This is why waking up can feel like failure, because it means abandoning the quest for success as an independent agent. And it's very humiliating to that which tried to build itself up out of nothing into something which was forever an impossibility. Intelligence dawning upon the mind realizes this and doesn't bother to feel guilty and get sidetracked, but immediately chooses for sanity and lets go of the attempt to be something on its own. Continuing, it has been particularly difficult to overcome the ego's belief in the body as an end, because this is synonymous with the belief in attack as an end. The ego has a real investment in sickness. If you are sick, how can you object to the ego's firm belief that you are not invulnerable? You see, being sick isn't real. It's something you have a right to be free of, and it is something you can be free of instantaneously because it isn't real. But the ego needs it to be real so that it can convince you that you are vulnerable and therefore need to defend yourself. And once you take the bait, you're caught on a merry-go-round that goes nowhere but exhausts you. Again, the ego has a real investment in sickness. If you are sick, how can you object to the ego's firm belief that you are not invulnerable? This is a particularly appealing argument from the ego's point of view, because it obscures the obvious attack which underlies the sickness. What's the underlying attack? The belief that you're a body, the belief that you're independent, the belief that you are an orphan and have no source, and that you are what you're experiencing yourself as at the moment, which is a body. The attack is body identification. If you accepted this and also decided against attack, you could not give this false witness to the ego's stand. It is hard to perceive sickness as a false witness, because you do not realize that it is entirely out of keeping with what you want. This witness then appears to be innocent and trustworthy because you have not seriously cross-examined him. Cross-examined sickness. If you did, you would not consider sickness such a strong witness on behalf of the ego's views. A more honest statement would be as follows: those who want the ego, in other words, those who want to be authorizers, those who want the thrill, the hit of creating meaning out of nothing and making it become truly something, are predisposed to defend it. Therefore, their choice of witnesses should be suspect from the beginning. The ego does not call upon witnesses who would disagree with its case, nor does the Holy Spirit. Nor does the Holy Spirit. We have said that judgment is the function of the Holy Spirit, and one which He is perfectly equipped to fulfill. The ego, as a judge, gives anything but an impartial judgment. When the ego calls on a witness, it has already made the witness an ally. I'm going to back up. The ego does not call upon witnesses who would disagree with its case. Now, when you are confronted by someone who is identifying himself or herself as a body, and is engaged in defense, being with you as though you are an opponent, whether you're asserting your opposition at the moment or not, you will find that they will not address what's true in you, but they will address any little ego just a moment. Beliefs which you treasure. And of course, these ego beliefs will not be true. And because they are beliefs that you, as an ego, one identifying with the body, treasure, they will call it into question. They will demean it. They will insult it. Why? So as to call out from you an ego witness to the one calling it forth. You may be doing quite well in being clear about the truth. You may be doing quite well in staying in your peace. You may be doing quite well in staying with the Holy Spirit and letting the Holy Spirit reveal to you His perspective, which at the bottom line is your true perspective. An ego in defense approaching you will not want to call forth witnesses for your clarity. The ego will call forth ego dynamics in you that are not yet put to rest. Ego beliefs which you still intend to defend because you treasure them. This is very important to understand, because when this happens, it's an invitation for you to abandon the Holy Spirit or your right mind. It's an invitation for you to crawl back into the crab barrel and react from the old habit of personal self-protection and the old habit of somehow finding a way to be equal to or better than the one challenging you, so that you can, once again, attempt to have the satisfaction of truly being something on your own. The ego of another will never seek in you a witness to that which is in balance in you. And so you must be alert when you find yourself losing your balance and becoming reactive and willingly engaging in defense. Because the ego of another is making an ally of that which isn't even real in you, and that which you really do not wish to re-engage. But that is the way it happens. Continuing, it is still true that the body has no function of itself because it is not an end. You know what? It's a reflection. It's a reflection of the movement of God. It's like the leaves on the trees moving as a reflection of the movement of the wind. The body has no function of itself because it is not an end. The ego, however, establishes it as an end because, as such, it will lose its true function. Its true function of what? Being a means of communication. It causes your attention to become arrested and preoccupied with the body. The ego, however, establishes it as an end because, as such, it will lose its true function. And if it loses its true function, you lose your real or true conscious awareness of who and what you are. And so it's very important to this little imposter, this state of self-defense, defending the existence of something which doesn't exist. This is the purpose of everything the ego does. Its sole aim is to lose sight of the function of everything. A sick body does not make any sense. It could not make sense because sickness is not what the body is for. Sickness is meaningful only if the two basic premises on which the ego's interpretation of the body rests are true. Specifically, these are that the body is for attack, and two, that you are a body. Without these premises, sickness is completely inconceivable. And if it's inconceivable, it's impossible to experience. If you are going to continue to try to maintain this divorce from your source, you are going to be faced with these two premises and these two premises only: that the body is for attack and that you are a body. So, as you proceed in this coming week, once again, have some fun exploring the experience of identifying yourself as mind, the conscious awareness in which every single experience you will have this week will be going on. Which means that every single experience you have this week will be a mental experience, not an independently existing experience of a physical world. You see, considering the body as an end rather than a means means you're arrested at the movement of the acknowledgement of God, the acknowledgement of what is real in everything you're seeing. That movement has become arrested at the point of its expression because you become preoccupied with yourself as a body. So this week, practice not letting your attention become arrested at the body, but let your attention persist in fulfilling the intent to recognize God in everything you see, to extend or give acknowledgement to God in everything you see. Continuing, sickness is a way of demonstrating that you can be hurt. It is a witness to your frailty, your vulnerability, and your extreme need to depend on external guidance. Well, external. External to what? External to the Holy Spirit. That which is nothing more than your right mind, which is, for lack of better words, right in the middle of you. The central core, actually the center and circumference of your being, which is not different from God and is therefore infinite. Continuing, the ego uses this, the need to depend on external guidance, as its best argument for your need for its guidance. It dictates endless prescriptions for avoiding catastrophic outcomes. Now, the Holy Spirit, perfectly aware of the same data, does not bother to analyze them at all. If the data are meaningless, there is no point in considering them. How many of you fuss over the possibilities? How many of you fuss over the nature of the ego that means that you'd better be alert constantly, second-guessing what the ego might do next? Taking in, classifying, categorizing ego data, instead of saying, Father, what's the truth? What's really going on here? And I don't mean what's really going on here with all of these ego ploys that are going on all around me. But what is the truth of reality right here? I'm willing to consider the possibility that all of these ego ploys and dynamics that are parading themselves in front of me most vocally and forcefully, I'm willing to consider the possibility that they're not actual, that they're not real, and therefore don't require my attention. And I want to know, Father, what is really going on here? What is the movement of creation that is going on here